y'all. The Olympics are winding down as we speak in Paris. Tom Cruise is doing a stunt that looks very similar to something Sarah did in Las Vegas, so I'm not sure how life-threatening it was. But we thought that this might be a lovely piece of music to end our little Olympics celebration over here. I have often dreamed of a far-off place where a hero's welcome will be waiting for me, where the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, this is where I'm meant to be. I'll be there someday. I can go the distance. I will find my way. If I can be strong, I know every mile will be worth my while. When I go that distance, I'll be right where I belong. Down an unknown road to embrace my fate. Though that road may wander, it will lead me to you, and 1,000 years will be worth the wait. It may take a lifetime, but somehow I'll see it through, and I won't look back. I can go the distance. I will stay on track. No, I won't accept defeat. It's an uphill slope, but I won't lose hope. I will go that distance till my journey is complete. I will go that distance till my journey is complete. And our little salute to all of these brave Olympians we've been watching the last couple of weeks make us so proud, and we have brought home officially now, y'all, more gold medals than anybody else, which proves some stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
probably.
sure.
But we're really good at the Olympic stuff, so I'm very proud of all of our athletes. Yeah, y'all, welcome, Boxing Man. Yosue's here. All the cool folks are here.
Happy Sunday, y'all. I know a lot of people are getting ready for school tomorrow, so hopefully your households are nice and tame, calming down a little now.
Some of my little voice students went back to school last week.
Last
week, I told him, I was like, do you want me to write you a note? We would have rioted if we had to go back before the Jerry Lewis telethon, but I guess times have changed. Hey, Mike is here. All the cool folks are here. Thanks for being here, y'all. So you're here on a very special night, you all. One of our very first artisans that we got a chance to reach out to at the very beginning of our journey was Will from Barrister and Mann, because those echoes of all of those scents, especially Seville and Muir Woods, were just echoing through the community. So we decided just to pick up the phone and call him, and he was the nicest guy, spent an hour at least on the phone with us, and told us all kinds of sort of behind the scenes stuff that was really important to know, including the idea that there was one scent note that he kept adding to the scent, but there's a point of diminishing returns where you can keep adding oil, but you're not going to get any more scent out of it. So they're just really interesting chemistry level things that Will kind of told us about at the very beginning of our journey.
One of our first weeks, we were so spoiled as newbies. We got to talk to all these fun artisans, and he spent so much time with us answering questions. It was so sweet.
I think his mom was in the background for one of them.
I hope so, yeah.
So, y'all, we are loaded up here with our Barrister and Mann soaps. Are they here yet?
Let's see.
Are you here, Will? You can request to join live.
I think I did see that they were here.
Oh,
so
good.
We'll see
hit the
Instagram.
Hit the request to join live there, Will.
Feel free to put some questions. We'll make sure to sneak some time in at the end if y'all have any questions for them as well. So
I have a question.
Marcus has a question.
I have a question on behalf of the community. We all love Seville as a phenomenal barbershop, but we're not sure how it's a phenomenal barbershop.
But it is.
Discuss. Right, here we go.
Yeah.
Right. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Nice to meet you, Paula.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Will and his mom, Paula, and this looks like one of the workshops for Barrister and Mann.
Hopefully you didn't work late tonight.
It's a packing room.
Oh, it's Excellent. I love it. So let me switch over to our question. So I know we've talked on the phone, but we've never met face to face. It's so nice to meet you. This is my much better half. This is Sarah. And the community has been so excited to see you tonight. They've even sent us in a few questions.
They did.
So actually, we decided we're going to start here with a question for Paula.
We're going to bug Paula first. No pressure. But when Will was growing up, was there any clues like that one day he'd be with all this perfuming scent stuff?
What we
What are you looking at me for?
when he was in, I don't remember what year it was.
Oh, I know what this is, yeah.
He made me a perfume when you were, what, 10, 11?
I think it was in 6th grade.
6th grade.
So you were like 11.
I still have it.
No way.
And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So he made that.
Okay.
So
Really the right question.
he made that perfume for me. I don't know exactly what I don't remember now what the reason was. That's about, 30 some odd years ago.
20, thank you.
20 years ago.
You hear this?
I was thinking 6, and
Yeah, all right, okay. All right, that's fair. That's
So
okay.
Anyway,
You're forgiven.
I don't remember the reason that he made me a perfume. It was for something for school, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember the exact details as to why. But it's in a really cool bottle that you got from...
I think I got it from Brody. I think it's a maple syrup bottle.
I think it's a... Okay. But it doesn't look like a maple syrup bottle.
Yeah.
It's really kind of cool. And so he made this perfume for me. I've worn it many times, and it's still sitting on my dresser. So,
cool.
So I guess maybe there was a clue, although I would have to say that while he was in high school and then in college and then in law school, it wasn't really something I thought he was going to get into. I thought he was going to be an attorney.
Yeah, I
So did I. But
I think if we
that
could all
changed.
go back to what made us happiest in 6th grade, this would be a much better world.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
Just force-feed ourselves milk and cookies.
Right. So we have one obligatory question we ask everybody. I'm sure you've told this story before, but for those who have not heard, can you tell us about how Barrister and Mann got started and what hats you both wear?
Okay, yeah. So I get asked this question. I think every time I've ever been interviewed, I've been asked this question.
We are the land ad for the newbies, so a lot of our folks haven't heard the story yet.
Yeah, okay. So I was in law school when I started Barrister Mann. I got into wet shaving in my first year. Yeah, it was the second semester of my first year. And I have super sensitive skin, still have super sensitive skin, really prone to ingrown hairs and all that. And so I had been shaving with like hair conditioner in college. Excuse me, which was just awful. And it was like, it wasn't a good conditioner. It was like Suave, kiwi melon or cucumber melon or something. It was awful. It was terrible. Anyway, whatever. So it was like a cartridge razor and hair conditioner. It was just horrendous. So I don't remember how actually how I found, Reddit's Wicked Edge community. Like somebody tagged the sub. And I was like, what the hell is this? And so I followed it. And at the time, it was tiny. It was like 7,000 people. Now it's like 350,000 people. It's gigantic. Which actually, by Reddit standards, I don't think it's that big. But I don't know 350,000 people. So anyway, so I got into it. I bought a starter kit from West Coast Shaving, which was still owned by the original family back then. It's changed hands a number of times since. And I went over to Colonial Drug in Cambridge and got a little jar of Cella, which I developed an allergy to later, and was just like wandering around in the store. And for anybody who's ever been to Colonial Drug, they were maybe a little less accommodating than they might have been. It's their way. And so I got into wet shaving and I really enjoyed it. And I was, it kind of occurred to me that like the revival of wet shaving was being driven by these folks who were basically making soap in their kitchens. Like, people like Mike, Michelle of Mystic Waters, who I think is still making soap, Mama Bear, a number of others. But Mike was kind of the big kid on the block at the time. And Sterling had just gotten going. And so anyway, so I was like, well, if these folks can do it, I can do it. And I was, I just got interested in it. And so I spent that summer teaching myself how to make soap. And at the time, the methods for making shaving soap were very closely guarded. Like, it was not easy to learn that information. Now, of course, you can't throw a stick without finding somebody who will tell you how to make shaving soap. But, so I basically checked out every book I could find at the Boston Public Library on how to make soap, which was a surprisingly large number, actually. And so I started making soap in my kitchen. I was primarily, and there was this little galley kitchen in Boston. It was, you could hold your arms out to, on either side, and you touch both walls. It was a tiny thing. So anyway, so I was pretty bored with the fragrances that were coming out of the shaving world, because Mike does some nice stuff. A lot of his stuff is, simple essential oil kind of scents, which works really well for a lot of people. But I was looking for something kind of more. And a lot of things were perfumery dupes, were cologne dupes, things like Green Irish Tweed or whatever. And I was just not really into it. And so I was like, okay, well, let me mess around with this, and I'll do some fragrances myself, and I'll make soap for myself. And I was like, oh, that'll be fun. Because, I had so much free time in law school, and I had, I needed to fill my hours. So that December, so the December of my second year in law school, for anybody who doesn't know, law school is 3 years unless you go to night school, at which point it's 4 years. So the December of my second year at law school, I was in patent law, and I got an email that I had been accepted into an internship in San Francisco for the following summer. Right. And in 2013, San Francisco was not a cheap place to live. It's not a cheap place to live now either, but it was,
we'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. So, I lived in Upper Bayview, which is not exactly the ritziest place, but, it worked. And so I ended up paying almost $700 a month to live in what was effectively a lofted broom closet. My bed, I couldn't sit up in bed. I would smash my head against the ceiling. It was that low. So it was not a comfortable place to live. But so I was working in the Castro. I was living in Upper Bayview, and I was and it was an unpaid legal internship, like most legal internships. And I was like, okay, I need to do something to pay for my living expenses, and I don't really know what to do. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And so I was like, people are really into shaving soap. Maybe I'll just make shaving soap and sell shaving soap. And so that March 2013, I launched the company, and within a couple of weeks, I couldn't make soap fast enough. I was making soap at like 20 jars at a time, or $20. I didn't even have jars then. I had tins, and I was making pucks in PVC, 3-inch PVC tubing. Right. And I was doing 20 something pieces at a time. I was making it in a crock pot. And so I called my parents after 2 weeks. I was like, all right, I got a problem. I can't make soap fast enough. What am I going to do? And so Mom and Dad had been pro bakers when I was a kid, and they still had a lot of the equipment. They had a commercial bakery, which actually served as the soap lab for many years until the pandemic, when we had to expand the lab production size. So anyway, I called my parents. I was like, what do I do? And my father was like, well, why don't you bring it home? And he's like, we'll make it. And I was like, okay, you guys make it and you ship it, and I'll run the packaging. I'll run the product, the customer service, and the development and the marketing and all that stuff from San Francisco, and we'll go from there. And so they're like, yeah, okay, that works. And so that was how we did it for that first 6 months. And so I drove across the country with the woman I was dating at the time, and spent 3 months in San Francisco, which, if nobody remembers 2013, that was the year that the court struck down Proposition 8. And I still remember when they like closed Castro Street Wednesday night. Like that was a wild week. Like I saw Dita Von Teese that week, because my boss had a friend in the show. And so like we went to Japantown and saw Dita Von Teese. And then like that following weekend was Pride, and so like we went to the Trans March and the Dyke March. I don't think I had ever been to Pride, and so Pride in San Francisco is it's an event in most cities, but Pride in San Francisco is like a way of life. And so it was wild. I had a great time. So Mom flew out in August, and we drove back. I had driven out there in 6 days. We drove back in 4 days, which I will tell you, don't drive across the country in 4 days. It's a miserable experience. We drove, what did we do, 12 hours a day or so? It was awful. Anyway, so we got back. And I got back, and the legal market had just like collapsed, right? Like this was like a 2-year period where, unless you went to Harvard or NYU or wherever, one of the T14 schools, you really couldn't get a job as a lawyer in Boston. And a lot of the people that I went to law school with suffered for a couple of years looking for employment. Like they ended up doing other things. A lot of them never became lawyers at all. A lot of them never practiced law at all. And many of them took, 3, 4, 5 years to find jobs in the legal field. I have one of my best friends from law school she worked for a disability firm. This startup thought that they were going to make money on people who were disabled and had to like go to them because they couldn't afford disability attorneys. And they're like, yeah, these people have so much money to give us. So she worked for them for a year and then ended up working for Bank of America she still works for Bank of America, and I think has now interviewed for a job as assistant counsel. And until now, she has a law degree. She speaks 3 or 4 languages. She has never practiced law since she worked as a disability attorney until now. So, and this is almost a decade. I've been out of law school 10 years. So anyway, I get back to the East Coast. The legal market has fallen apart, and I was like, and we're still selling a lot of shaving soap. And I was like, okay, well, I said to Mom, like, originally I said to Mom, like, if I shut it down at the end of the internship, like, it'll have done everything I ever asked of it. But I get back, and of course I didn't shut it down. I kept on going because it was like, this is the only way I can support myself at the moment. So we've been doing that ever since.
Don't tell your kids to go to law school. Make shaving soap.
There you go.
Yeah. That's a dramatically less stressful and dramatically more profitable way to make a living. Yeah,
and way more fun.
Clearly.
All right, I'll give you that one. It is probably more fun.
Okay, so we'll go back to Mom. Throw for the next question here. So, is there a what are the musical influence? Is that where I'm going?
Oh, sure.
No, actually, the question I think we had for Paula is there a single scent note that is your favorite that you like overall? Like if you had to pick, if you have a
No.
Oh, you're full of it.
Okay.
Vanilla. Come on.
Vanilla. Okay, vanilla.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
so I was thinking about it in terms of one particular soap fragrance.
Oh, no, vanilla.
No, vanilla is definitely. I like the darker. I like the darker fragrances. I like the rich fragrances, vanilla heavy, and the darker. I can't really wear floral scents particularly well. They don't smell good on me. I do much better with things in the vanilla area.
I would go so far as to say that you can't wear white florals, things like jasmine and tuberose.
Okay.
Like, I've smelled lavender perfumes on you, and they're perfectly fine.
Yeah. So vanilla, I guess, would be. I would still. Love to make just a vanilla soap, but it's so expensive.
We did it.
We did it early on.
Yeah, Vanille was our first Valentine's Day soap, but that was before the price of Vanilla Absolute went to like $500 an ounce.
Right.
And even then, it cost a fortune to make. Like, it was very expensive to make.
Now, Will, we've been stalking some of your previous interviews, and you have been known to say, and rightly so, that the frag world is sort of driven by sex. That's what drives the frag
Always has been.
So big question, because in the shaving soap world, it's not. What does drive the shaving soap world?
Oh, I don't believe that at all.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, no, because I think that the shaving soap world is driven by... The fragrance world is driven by sex, but masculine fragrance in particular is driven by, like, compliment getters.
Okay.
Like, that's how guys measure fragrance, whether they like a fragrance or not, is
if their significant other
or
their
like
spouse
or women in their office or whatever, or guys. Guy. I shouldn't say that. Guys in their other people.
So if you buy a fragrance, you buy a soap, and you love the fragrance, but your significant other, your wife, your husband, your whomever, somebody that you care about their opinion, doesn't like it, dead in the water.
Yeah.
Dead in the water.
How much for me?
So many times we'll see posts that I love it, but my wife hates it, so I can only wear it when she's out of town.
Yeah.
So we get that a lot.
So I mean, like, my thinking here is that, like, that is its own kind of sex appeal, because it's the validation of being noticed and feeling attractive. Like, if somebody that you find attractive, or whose opinion you value in some way, even if it's just a stranger, like, and you have no reason not to value their opinion, says to you, hey, you smell really good, like, that's validating, and you feel sexy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily that you think you're the proverbial cock of the walk, but you just, it warms your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, I would say that the wet shaving world is still very much driven by sex, because it's driven by fragrances that people like to get compliments on.
Right.
Yeah. And, I guess I am underestimating the fact that even though I love Saturday Morning by Katie's Bubbles that smells like Fruit Loops, it might be something that she finds sexy. Aventus and Green Irish Tweed are not the end-all, get-all when it comes to the only sexy scents in the world. So,
the other thing is that fragrance smells different on different people.
Mm-hmm.
Something may smell good on you, and Sarah may love it, but there may be somebody else that buys Katie's Bubbles, Saturday Morning, and it doesn't smell good on them.
Yeah.
It's amazing how different things can smell on different people.
Yeah.
So that's also, something that we run across. Well, it smells really good on me, but it smells terrible on this other person. So this other person doesn't like it because it doesn't smell good. And good is a relative term, and again, is that because everybody around them says it doesn't smell good, or, it's definitely very, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Subjective.
That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very subjective, and it has a lot to do with your individual chemistry.
And also, like, the differences between the evaporative profile on paper versus the evaporative profile on skin. Like, I'm fond of saying that perfume is the only art form that requires a human element to make it work. And what I mean by that is that, I mean, like, if you play a piece of music, right? And let's say it's, obviously you need, in theory, you need at least one musician to play a piece of music. But if you're just playing it out into the forest, like, it still sounds the same. Like, even if there's nobody there to hear it, the proverbial philosophical question.
Right.
But the thing is, like, so perfect example. There's a fragrance called Coeur de Noir, which is made by Beaufort London, that my girlfriend brought back for me from London when she was there a few weeks ago. And on paper, it's a smoke bomb. On my skin, it turns to straight gunpowder.
Interesting.
And it does not deviate from gunpowder in the slightest for 8 hours. It is the most bizarrely linear perfume I have ever encountered. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that on my skin, it smells completely different. It smells like straight gunpowder.
Right.
And you would never know that if you didn't try it on, if you didn't have that proverbial human element.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna change it a little bit. I need to ask you this, because I think if anybody in the wet shaving world, I think you and I are kindred spirits on this thought. Just in reading some of your writings and hearing some of your interviews, I think it's funny that in my line of work, it is not uncommon to see someone crying at a symphony hall. It is not uncommon for someone to tear up when they taste their grandmother's baklava. Like there are just certain things for all of the other senses that it's very common for it to be a little overwhelming and elicit tears. And we have had very similar responses with the sense of smell, but I find that that's not as common and not anywhere near as understood. Can you talk a little bit about how our sense of smell connects to our emotions?
So there are the so-called Marcel Proust, right? The famous playwright. Told a story about dipping Madeleines in tea, I think, and how it reminded him so intensely of, I think it was his grandmother. Or there's a really great segment from the Iron Chef Quest for an Iron Legend series on Netflix. Now, these are connected, I promise. Andrew Zimmern is one of the standing judges on that particular series. And at one point, I don't remember which chef it is, but she makes it's like a corn cake, and it's enrobed in chocolate. And the way it's done, he bursts into tears at one point because it reminds him of his grandmother, like dipping cheap snack cakes into chocolate milk when he was a kid. Like, he cries. And so, and like, since, taste and smell are very, very closely related. And so, like, the thing about fragrance is that you don't think it's important until you do. You hit that one fragrance, and it changes your life. Like, for me, that's a perfume called L'Artisan Zing, which was tragically discontinued a few years ago, but I've talked about it many times. Right? Yeah, exactly. The circus. I've told this story a lot, where I was a kid, and my father worked primarily in Jersey, and so he commuted back and forth between upstate New York, which is where we are now, and North Jersey, and a lot of times when he would come home, we would go and see this little circus at SUNY Oneonta, and like, that was one of the most special memories of my childhood. And so Zing smells like that circus, and I still love the circus. Like, the circus is one of my favorite things. My mother has a fabulous story like this, and I'm not going to tell the story. I'm going to let you tell the story, the Shalimar story.
Mm-hmm.
So, but please feel free, because like, for all. The thing about fragrance is that, as I said, like, you don't really think about it until you find that one that just hits you and just like grabs you in a way that nothing else ever has. And so you should tell the Shalimar story, actually.
Yeah, my parents are both gone now, but when I was a kid growing up, my father, we lived in the Chicago area, so I'm a Midwestern girl still. So my father was the youngest director of the Board of Trade in Chicago. He was a really big deal. And my parents used to go out a lot. Mm-hmm. And when they went out, my mother dressed to the nines. My father had beautiful custom-made suits and, silk ties. And when they went out, my mother had her hair in a French twist and the whole thing. And so it was a big deal. And a lot of times before the babysitter came to watch us, because I have a sister, a brother, and then a younger sister, my mother would put my sister and I, my sister Terry and I, in the tub and bathe us. And she always had Shalimar
dusting powder.
dusting powder. And Shalimar was the perfume that my mother always wore. My father bought it for her every year for Christmas, and she always wore it, and it smelled fabulous on her. And so I grew up smelling Shalimar, and it's still one of the perfumes I absolutely love. Again, a fair amount of vanilla in it. It's a very rich, beautiful.
It's an Oriental.
It's an Oriental.
It was arguably the first Oriental, the first true Oriental.
So when I
forgive the term, it's a perfumery term. You know what? It's 100+ years old, folks.
So it
just is what it is.
So it's a memory that I still have, obviously, and it's one of those perfumes. Every time I smell it, I think of that, of my mom and my dad getting ready to go out, dressed to the nines, my sister and I in the tub, my mother getting us out of the tub, drying us down, and then, putting this dusting powder all over us. And I loved it because she, I guess in her intent, was trying to make us feel like we were part of the going out kind of thing. Obviously we weren't, but it was just to make us feel included in what my parents were doing.
Right.
And so Shalimar to this day is still one of my absolute favorite perfumes, again, probably because of the memories that I have of my mom, and my dad too. So now you're gonna make me cry.
See? Sorry. And vintage Shalimar, like 1950s Shalimar, was Shalimar at the height of its powers, right? It was before nitromusks were banned from perfumery, or, at the very end of their life in perfumery. And nitromusks, for all of their horrendous carcinogenic toxicity, smell better than anything else.
Of course.
And so vintage Shalimar from the 40s and 50s is Shalimar at, when Dallaire was still making dirty vanillin exclusively for Guerlain, exclusively for use in Shalimar. It was Shalimar at the height of its power, and it's truly its greatest form ever. Like nowadays, I tell people don't even bother to smell the eau de toilette version of Shalimar, because the vanillin is the concentration is low enough that it smells like plastic. If you dilute vanillin enough, it smells plasticky, and the eau de toilettes for Shalimar these days, and they may have improved them since. I mean, so Thierry Wasser took over as the house perfumer of Guerlain after LVMH acquired it, and has really done a lot of good work, resurrecting its great masterpieces. Like the Mitsuko that they're making now is arguably the best Mitsuko that they've ever made, and Mitsuko is one of the 3 greatest perfumes of all time. So, and of all of them, the only one still in production, at least in its proper form. But so he may have been able to rehab Shalimar eau de toilette into something great once again. He's very, very talented. But I used to tell people, don't buy the eau de toilette, go for eau de parfum or above. Get the parfum Astray or the pure parfum if you can, because that's Shalimar in its best form in the present day. But like I said, Thierry Wasser may have fixed it. I don't know.
Right.
I haven't smelled it recently.
A good leeway though, because we were going to ask some of the greatest fragrances that bring back happy memories and stuff. Is there a certain way that you go about when you create scents? How do you find those happy times?
How do you discover for Barrister and Mann the happy memories that you want to recreate? How do you know?
A lot of them are not happy memories.
Maybe not hella.
I would go so far as
I phrased it like that is I heard Will say something very profound today, and it really stuck with me. What you said was even the saddest of childhoods is peppered with moments of happiness, moments of respite, and moments of joy. And that one of the great joys for you as a perfumer is to help people rediscover those moments that while our childhood might have been hard, to help rediscover in a scent those joys, those moments that we were happy, those moments that did make us who we were. And so how you discover, even if it's not necessarily, even if it's hollows, how do you find the moments that you want to recreate?
for example, Dickens.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I was actually thinking of Behold the Wetsis, but yeah, Dickens, I think, is actually maybe a little bit better of an illustration. I mean, like, for me specifically, it's things from my own childhood, and like, I grew up in a baking family.
I love to bake.
Yeah, my mom, and both my parents love to bake. My father is of primarily Czech ancestry. I never met my grandmother, or I only met my grandfather once. Like, it's a long story, so she was one of those people who like made she made her own clothes, like she made her own sausage. She was first generation, but it was still very much like old country. And so that my father is cut very much from that cloth, and so like both of my parents are very much into food. Mom still loves to bake. And so, like, a lot of what I grew up with was centered around food and baking and cooking and flavors, and so like that characterizes a lot of the best parts of my childhood in a lot of ways. Also, something that I don't frequently harp on, but if anybody ever really looks at my fragrance catalog, it becomes immediately apparent. So I grew up with a wood burning stove. Like, our house was heated by wood. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's great." No, don't have a wood burning stove. Like, they smoke, the ash it's horrible. Frequently, like, I have a lot of bad memories associated with the thing. Like, I used to go to school and I would like smell like cured meat, like I'd smell like smoke. And the thing was, I wasn't the only one. Like, there were a bunch of people around here who still heat their houses primarily with wood. And that's a scent that just like works its way into your clothing and into the walls and into your hair and everything. But I use smoke and burning wood and those kinds of things a lot in my work. And that's actually why. Because I have come to associate the scent of wood smoke and burning wood and things with comfort, with warmth, with, protection from the elements. And, outside, I mean, like, winters were a lot colder when I was a kid. I remember, the winter of 1995 when we had horrendous blizzards and we were basically stranded. I remember the extreme cold and the extreme temperatures. I remember, when the high during the day would get to like 2 below, like that was the high that day. And so, like, I've come to associate the smell of burning wood and wood smoke with comfort and safety. Right. And so that's something that I use as a way to kind of round out things a lot of times. Like, I'm often heard to say that fragrances need rumble and rasp, and I am known to use woods and smoke primarily for that purpose, because I feel that it gives them depth. Probably I probably overuse it, to be honest with you.
I don't think,
but like
that's okay. But yeah,
yeah. So that's where I pull it from. I mean, like, every so often I'll get a message from somebody, and I'll have hit some chord with them. I'll have struck some chord with them that I never expected to hit. And so sometimes people, puppy, hi.
Oh, no.
So anyway,
is that a burner?
No, it looks like a Cocker Spaniel.
Cavalier.
Cavalier Spaniel. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so that's where I pull it from, and sometimes that connects and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I'll do something and it hits people in a way that either they didn't expect or I didn't. And so, like, our very first release of the fougere soaps, the natural fougere soaps, which I can no longer manufacture, I remember getting an email from somebody, one of our early customers. He was like, "This smelled just like the inside of my grandmother's closet," and he had just recently lost his grandmother, and so he was moved And much to my chagrin, there was some variation in the natural materials, and I was never able to capture that for him again. I tried very hard, and whatever it was I was never able to get it back, whatever it was. And so that for those first few jars, the first releases, I remember he was so excited, and to the best of, I don't know if he still has any of it, but I know he treasured the stuff for years because it reminded him of his grandmother. And obviously, there was no way I could have ever predicted that. And so sometimes you just get, for lack of a better term, lucky.
Right.
You know, but or you have something like Katie's Bubble Saturday Morning, like Fruit Loops, like that reminds people of happy times in their lives,
watching cartoons, their jammies, and I remember that.
Like Calvin and Hobbes, like it's that kind of thing where you get up on a Saturday morning and it's the crack of dawn and you're watching, you're eating sugar frosted, I don't know, something bombs. I don't remember what the cereal is called from Calvin and Hobbes. But and like for a lot of people, that's a really happy memory. And sometimes, you just connect with the right thing.
Right. Now, here's something I have wondered for a while, and again, you're the perfect person to ask, because I know that in your study of law that you learned a lot about copyright. So here's a question for you. You ready? It is my understanding that you cannot copyright a cent in the United States, although there are a couple of odd exceptions. I think Plato is one of them. However, if you could copyright your original cents today, but it meant that you couldn't recreate Old Spice, would you do it?
It's a hard question.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because here's the thing, like, P&G absolutely has the ability to make Old Spice in all of its former glory. Like, the Shulton Old Spice that we get now is proof positive of that. Yeah, see, exactly. Yeah, the Spyglass. And, like, my understanding is that in the United States, they actually discontinued the original Old Spice a few years ago. Yep. Which is beyond bizarre to me. And so now they have like these incredibly crass, bro-y, weird derivatives that I really wish they would just stop with. I mean, like, so the reason that we did Old Spice and the reason that we did Caldy Island Lavender and the reason that we did, Floyd Blue, and I attempted to do Creed Cure to Receive, but we were never able to do it. And I tried to do, Baudelaire was a different thing, but I tried to do Bulgari Black. We tried to archive these things. Right. The reason that we did that was that the houses that made them stopped, or they changed them to the point where they were dramatically different. Like, Old Spice by the end of its life was a completely different fragrance than what Shulton was making even in the mid-'80s. And Shulton had already begun to tinker with the thing by the late 70s. Like, Mom and I stood here in this room with, 8 or 10 bottles in front of us, arranged by date code. Yeah. Right. From 1957 all the way up to 1992, which was when P&G acquired Shulton. Right. And like they had already begun to mess with it quite a bit by the time P&G bought the company. Right. They had begun to mess with it even by the late 60s. They were messing around with the thing. So, or like Caldy Island Lavender, which until we brought it to the proverbial masses, you could only get from the monks of Caldy Abbey, and now they've changed it, and apparently it's a completely different thing. And so, in many respects, we're the only ones who still have that formula. And so I was always very specific about the things that I was willing to copy. I believe strongly that we should not dupe fragrances that are in current production as they have always been. But for historical reasons, if we can save something, that's a different story. So I have always been
we're going to start using that word, archive.
Yeah.
I always referred to the Barrister's Reserve Project as an archival project. That was the idea, was to save these things from annihilation because the companies that had originally sold them either couldn't or wouldn't. And what we eventually determined, like there were a couple that we couldn't save. Like Creed Carius, which I have been, long controversially outspoken in my criticisms of Creed. But one of their truly great fragrances was Carius, which came out in the late 20s. And was an absolutely beautiful work. But the thing about it, they discontinued it in 2011. And what we eventually determined, I paid a fortune for like the last 50 mils I could find. Right. I paid an absolute fortune for the stuff. And so I sent it to the lab. And what we eventually determined was that the reason that they had discontinued it was that there was just no way to make it comply with regulation and not like seriously damage it. Right. And so we gave up because there was, as hard as I tried to save it, there was no way to save it.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, there is a European fragrance board, y'all, that is just crazy as far as what they will allow and not allow. And when Will compounds his stuff, he has to send it to them, and it gets crazy. Wow, we have a lot of questions for you. Okay, let's dive in. We have some community questions from the With Pack members. Let's see what we got here. The Razor Company would like to know, can you tell the story of Soap Makers of Awesome Town? I'd love to see that come back for an appearance. Apparently, Jason has hit a chord. What does that mean?
So, way back when, this was, what was this, 2016, I think?
Something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, so I think this was 2016. For April Fool's Day, we released a fragrance. We released that. It was sort of the proto Barrister's Reserve soap base and a fragrance that I had been working on. And we released it as like this entirely separate company called Soap Makers of Awesome Town. And we claimed that it had like dragon tallow and unicorn
stuff, all kinds of stuff. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was
ridiculous ingredient list.
Yeah, it was like the grand whatever the country is in Leonard Wibberley's The Mouse That Roared. The Grand Duchy of whatever it is. I can't remember now. Anyway, so the point of this was a joke, and the name came from the fact that when I first started Barrister and Mann, I was trying to come up with a name. And the woman I was dating at the time, who was the one I drove across the country with, I was like, what should I call it? And she was like, Soap Makers of Awesome Town. And I was like, that's an awful name. But I did design labels under that name, and I never used them. And we went with Barrister and Mann largely because I thought a two-part name sounded more distinctive and refined and more fancy. Right. So the name Soap Makers of Awesome Town started as a joke, and then we released it as an April Fool's joke. And then, as I said, it was sort of the prototypical version of what eventually became the Barrister's Reserve soap base. It was sort of my first time experimenting with synthetic detergents and synthetic lathering agents, which I eventually abandoned because they were just too hard to work with, at least on a small scale. But so that's where it came from.
all the retailers that we had at the time were in on the joke.
Yeah, and they were
all sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
But of course, we had one retailer who couldn't keep his mouth shut.
It was Pasteur, wasn't it?
Pasteur Pharmacy. Yeah. It was Leon. He wrecked it for everybody. Remember, Casey Maggard was absolutely furious that he had spoiled the joke.
Yeah.
And so she was really, really mad that he had spoiled it for everybody because they were all in on it. They all knew.
Yeah,
Razor Company, Maggard Razors, West Coast.
Did the Razor Company exist?
I don't know if the Razor Company even existed at that point, but Jason,
Jason was paying attention, I'm sure.
He was paying attention, so... Anyway, so I remember Casey was mad. Casey was mad because Leon wrecked it for everybody. And it sold well enough, and it was kind of fun to do, and people laughed about it.
200 jars or something?
Yeah, 200 jars.
There wasn't a lot of it.
We didn't make a ton of it, but...
Great.
But we have some plans.
Yeah, we have some plans if our April Fool's episode ever lands on April Fool's. We thought of actually doing, like, inventing an artisan and soap and reviewing the greatest shaving soap in the world and telling everybody to get it, but it doesn't exist.
Couldn't get it,
Right.
Doesn't exist.
So we'll have the idea
Clearly,
first.
it's been done, yes.
Super Springs has a question. When we say EDPs, EDTs, colognes, aftershaves, it's basically a combination of the scent oil in a dilution. So it's basically the percentages of how diluted they are. EDPs are generally the most expensive extracts, and then goes down to EDTs and then down to like aftershaves and things like that. Foxy Matt would like to know, why were the group of scents, specifically lavender, recently discontinued?
Honestly, it was sales numbers. Like we looked at sales numbers. We needed to consolidate the catalog because it was just getting unwieldy. It was becoming too difficult to manage. And so what we ended up doing was we were like, okay, we've got 13. Let's take the bottom performers and we'll let them go. And and I'm going to be honest, like lavender was the one that one was like killing a child. Like I am still seriously considering bringing it back because like that's the one that I was really, really sad to lose. I love I love the lavender fragrance of all of them, of all the Barrister's Reserve fragrances. That was the one that I was the most excited to save. With the possible exception of Fern, which people really didn't like, which was weird. And I think the reason for that was that we had to rebuild it from... all right, very brief perfumery history. The first modern perfume, or rather the first perfume ever to incorporate a synthetic material, which gave rise to modern perfumery as we think of it, was Fougère Royale, which was released in 1882 by the House of Houbigon. And it was a big deal. It incorporated coumarin, which at the time was being made from coal tar. Now they don't use coal tar anymore. But it was the first true perfume in that sense, although arguably the first modern perfume did not debut until 6 years later when Guerlain released Jicky, which is still in production. So Houbigon went bankrupt in 1962. Now they were back. The house was repurchased in like the late aughts. They are making a fragrance they call Fougère Royale. It bears absolutely no resemblance to the original. As someone who has multiple bottles of the stuff from different time periods, the weirdest thing is that none of them particularly resembles any of the others. So the holy grail of all Fougère Royale fragrances is the very first one. I have attempted to rebuild it a number of times. I do have about 50 milliliters of the original aftershave. I honestly considered sending it to the lab for analysis, and I remember saying to Mom, I can't bring myself to do it. It would be like burning the Mona Lisa and trying to recreate it by color by number. I just can't do it. So what we ended up doing was when Houbigon went bankrupt, they licensed all of their fragrances out to an American subsidiary called DeParco. And DeParco made a fragrance called H for like 5 or 6 years, which was ostensibly Fougère Royale, but it was like zhuzhed up for the 60s. It was fairly different. So that was what we ended up recreating, largely because it was so much easier to acquire. To this day, the only time I have ever seen a bottle of original Fougère Royale on the market was as this aftershave. And as I said, I just couldn't bring myself to destroy it. I really I agonized over it. Remember, it took me weeks. I was like, I have it, and I still have it, and I just couldn't bring myself to destroy it because the analysis is not a preservative process. Like you will destroy whatever it is that you're breaking apart, and so like there's no getting it back once it was gone. And so but anyway,
only you would know. I think does Tom Ford and stuff, do they start from scratch, or did they buy their oils? Like, is there a big truck of cherries that shows up?
No, they start from scratch. They most of the Tom Ford fragrances are done by the perfumers of like IFF or Givaudan. Basically, what they do is they put out a brief, and I've seen a few Tom Ford briefs, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of the Mann. He cuts a beautiful suit, but I think he's kind of a jerk. But like, honestly, Tom Ford
of cherries that shows up at Tom Ford when he goes to make Lost Cherry. Like, does he start with cherries?
No, Tom Ford has never composed a fragrance in his life. Tom Ford doesn't really know anything about fragrance. Well, he probably knows a fair bit about fragrance chemistry, if I'm being honest. Like, he's been immersed in it for almost 30 years, so he probably knows a fair bit about fragrance chemistry. I should definitely give the man his due, but he's not a perfumer. He's a creative director. He's a suit maker, but he's not a perfumer. And so, like, nearly all of the great Tom Ford masterpieces, things like Tobacco Vanille, I would not call fucking Fabulous a masterpiece, but it's very famous if for no other reason than its name. There are a number of the Tom Ford fragrances, like Rive Gauche pour Homme is arguably a Tom Ford fragrance because he was working for whoever did that. Goddamn. I think it was Dior, but somebody's gonna chime in and be like, "No, you're full of it." So, right.
But he oil. It doesn't start with like cherries, right?
No.
He starts.
No. So there's no such thing as cherry essential oil, and if there were, it would be poisonous as hell because cherry pits naturally contain cyanide. No, but so. Most cherry fragrances in general start with primarily two materials. There are the so-called cinnamaldehydes and cinnamates, which are so named because they were originally refined from cinnamon oils and cinnamon bark, but now they're manufactured synthetically, and they smell like. Honestly, they smell kind of like Robitussin. But.
My cousin gets a plastic smell.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I was just curious if it always starts with like the natural ingredients or if it kind of
No. As a matter of fact, I have the formula for Tobacco Vanille, like the actual formula for Tobacco Vanille, and its natural content is pretty low.
Wow. See, that's what I want to know. That's Chris asks, Chris, upstate New York is everything that's not Manhattan. No. Angelo and Crystal.
Hell, you say.
I knew that would get a rise out of him. Okay, let's see. Angelo and Crystal, two fabulous wet shavers who happen to sleep next to each other. Both would like to know if the What's This will be beholden again soon.
If we do it, we'll probably do it next March because we did it in order to celebrate Dr. Seuss's birthday, which is March 7th. I believe it's March 7th.
Okay. Gotcha. Good to know. Noted.
So if we do it, it'll be next March.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we have a surprising number of people that really like the What's This.
Yeah.
It was really a fun fragrance to do. We had two of the people that were working for us at the time do the artwork for those labels and so on. So, and then Will wrote, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the story about the What's This.
Yeah, there's a whole I wrote like a Dr. Seuss-esque story about the What's This and what the What's This was.
And
part of the marketing,
it was very cool. I actually found a copy of it the other day when I was looking for some labels. There's a copy of it.
It might still be on the blog. I gotta look it up. I think it's still on the blog somewhere.
But it's silly and fun, and it was a fun launch to do. We created this character called What's This, and Jen designed What's This, and then Wendy did the rest of the labeling.
Yeah. So it was a group. It was a team effort.
It was a team effort. It was fun. And it smells like, what do people say? It smells like cookies and
childhood memories.
Childhood memories.
I call
wow.
Yeah. So another one of those childhood things that works. Yeah. So
now Sean Smaldridge is tipping us off that there might be a season of The Witch on the horizon. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
All right. So, I got to show you this before I do anything else. This was at my mother's insistence that I go get this thing.
There's cauldrons coming.
Yeah, this is the cauldron.
Oh, it's
got to open it.
Okay.
It's real.
It's ceramic.
Yeah, it's ceramic. It doesn't have a lid at the moment. There will be lids.
There will be lids. Yeah.
So I have wanted to. So Halloween is a big thing for me. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. We really kind of made our name with Hallows. Like that was sort of the first Barrister and Mann fragrance that really got people's attention.
Right.
Partly because at the time it was very rare. The original production was only 27 pieces.
Yep.
Yeah, and we sent 7 to the judges. This was part of the Sharpologist sent-off competition in 2013. And so we sent, I think, 7 or 8 to the judges, and then we released the rest to the public, and of those, 2 of them were either lost or destroyed. And so, it kind of lived in infamy as this fragrance that very few people had ever smelled, and had it was a really weird idea because of everybody who contributed to the contest. I was the only one who really leaned into Halloween. And so, Halloween has long been kind of part of Barrister and Mann's DNA. We did Hallows for several years, including our infamous 2016 release with the X-ray of the skull and that man who unfortunately died with nails. And honest to God, I didn't know it was real until we had already greenlit production. I had no idea.
Oh no!
So perhaps tellingly, the graphic design firm that created that is gone now. We didn't do it; they just fell apart. And then we did Fougere Gothique in 2017, and then we did Lissa in 2019. The world ended 4 months later. That was weird. We did the zombie apocalypse survival kit, and did Lissa. It smelled like a funeral home, and people thought that was weird. And so Halloween is a big thing, and we did the 4 Horsemen in 2022, which is something I had wanted to do for a while, and I've wanted to do like a New England witchcraft theme for a while. Nice. And so I've been kind of kicking this idea around, and so the fragrance is very heavily derived from Macbeth and the double boil and trouble rhyme. Like every one of those things is an allegory to something. Right. And so I specifically designed the fragrance around that with the express intention that the central character of the soap of the scent would be this stuff called Spanish broom. And so brooms, at least originally, were made from dried broom. That's where the name comes from. And broom itself has a honey rose, slightly tobacco floral kind of character. Right. It's really neat stuff. I will be 100% honest with you. There is no real broom in this because it's $5,500 a kilo. It's a lot of money. Yeah. So I recreated broom. Okay. Or built an accord that recreates the smell of broom. But the idea is that we're going to be offering these cauldrons full of soap, which will be 7 ounces, because I couldn't get a smaller cauldron. I looked, I tried. And so this was sort of the best I could do. But they're really cool, and they're pottery, and when you're done with them, you can use them as a coffee mug or something, and as I said, they'll have a lid. We talked to Rob Moffat at Chisel and Hound, and he put together broomstick brushes for us, which will be available in both boar and synthetic. Boar and synthetic. And so those are super cool, and he went above and beyond. They're so cool. Season of the Witch, the pre-order will drop tomorrow, and primarily the reason we're doing the pre-order is that we have to know how many mugs and brushes to acquire. And Rob's I gotta figure out how many sticks I gotta go out and find.
Right? Right. We get a heads up here, people,
Yeah.
Right, so what we're going to do is put together a set, which will be the cauldron.
Be like a witch kit.
It'll be the cauldron.
That might be what I call it.
So it'll be the cauldron with the cool soap in it, and then a choice of brush, either boar or synthetic, and then there will be a splash, and a bomb. But the way the set's going to be set up is they can have one or the other, whichever they prefer.
You guys got a choice.
They have a choice because a lot of times people don't want the bomb; they just want the splash. So we're going to give them the option, and then there's going to be an EDP for that as well. And it'll be in a special box, and it'll be, that's when I get to do my cool stuff. So it'll be very cool when we get it all finished. It'll be very thematic, and so what we're going to do is sell sets for a discounted price. And then if they don't want the set, if they don't want all the pieces, that's cool too. They can buy the individual pieces, but they won't be discounted. But we're going to do the sets, I think, will be very cool. I'm really excited about doing those, kind of along the lines of what we did with Horseman, in the way that I package those.
Less complex,
but not quite as complicated as Horseman was. Horseman was a lot to put together.
And the other thing is that a lot of the packaging and a lot of the thematics and the branding all takes draws reference from things like the Malleus Maleficarum, Heinrich Kramer's witch hunting manual from the 1650s. Cotton Mather, and the Wonders of the Natural World, his account of the Wonders of the Invisible World, his account of the Salem witch trials, a number of other things, things like Macbeth, the Crucible, New England has a long and very deep-rooted history with witchcraft. And, long before anybody like H.P. Lovecraft or Mary Shelley really paid much attention to it, New Englanders went out and hanged 19 people and pressed one of them to death. And before that, there were the Connecticut witch trials 40 years prior, where a number of people were executed for witchcraft. New England has a very strange history with witches, partly because Puritans are a superstitious bunch of lunatics. If anybody out there is Puritan, I'm sorry, but it's true. But anyway, I've long thought that the New England Gothic witchcraft tradition is very cool, very interesting, and there's a lot that we can draw from it. And Salem, the town of Salem, the city of Salem, embraces it wholeheartedly. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Salem, but there's literally a statue of Elizabeth Montgomery as and from Bewitched, right there in the town square. It's just kind of ridiculous that how deeply they got into it.
Right.
But and I've been, they got really into the Hocus Pocus thing because Hocus Pocus is set in Salem, and so they're tours and things. So, but we're really excited.
What time do they go on sale? They want to know.
Yeah, people are asking if there's
I'm gonna aim for noon. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm having a little bit of trouble finishing off the copy, and I really pride myself on my copy. And so it might be 1 o'clock, guys. You'll get an email. There will be an email. And the thing is, this will not be limited. The pre-order is going to be open for 6 days.
Yeah, and this is the pre-order.
Yeah,
we will not be shipping this.
Pre-order at 3 a.m. the witching hour.
No, I got hate mail for that.
We used to do the Hallows launches at midnight.
Yeah,
we used to do them at midnight,
and we got hate mail for it.
A lot of trouble for that.
Yeah, so people were mad. So we don't do that anymore.
We stopped doing that. We used to do them at midnight.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that is fantastic.
And I love it. Don't think I don't hear Vincent Price's voice in my head from Thriller, right? Darkness falls across the land, the witching hour is supposed to end. But I really take a lot of pride in my copy, and I have long I really enjoy the process of writing copy for our Halloween releases, and I'm having a little trouble with this one, and so it might take me a little bit. It might be a little later in the day. As I said, though, the pre-order will be open for 6 days. Okay. This will not be limited. Really what we're doing, the reason we hold a pre-order at this point is that so we know how many of these things to obtain.
How many cauldrons, because obviously we don't make the cauldrons, and Chisel and Hound is making our brushes. pieces.
Yeah,
So we have to know how many to get. So,
and I see Sharp Shavers asking how much it's going to be. Sharp, it's going to be $150 for the whole set, and then we're also going to offer the individual pieces. The eau de parfum will be $60, the cauldrons will be $45, the brushes will be $40. We're also going to offer, regular jars of soap for our usual $25 price.
Oh, cool.
So we're offering a lot of options here for folks.
So they'll be able to, to get the size and whatever that they want.
Yeah.
Fun.
I'm going to want to make sure I get everybody. Brett had a quick question. Is there in the Venn diagram, is the House of Mammoth and Barrister and Mann, is there any commonality to your story?
I don't think so. I mean, you'd really have to ask Ben that question. I don't think so, but,
and let's see. Okay.
Ben has a day job.
Ben has a full-time day job, as opposed to us two.
Right.
Yeah.
So these two might overlap. Rob, our friend from Ireland, he wants to know, and he specifically wants to hear from Paula an embarrassing story about Will, and don't we all? But that might go along with one of the questions that we always usually end with when we are lucky enough to have a couple with us. Can you tell us what you like best about each other?
We'll give you a moment to think.
Or go ahead, tell your embarrassing story.
No,
it makes me really strained to come up with what I like about you, Mom.
Do I have to tell an embarrassing story? Do I have to?
You don't have to. But you do have to tell us what you like best about him.
Yeah, we'll settle for that.
Okay. In the 11 and a half years we've been doing this together, we have struggled on and off, been at each other's throats on and off, but I have to say we have seen some of the most bizarre things. People behave in a way sometimes that's really mind-boggling to us, but I've loved every minute of it. He is so creative. He is so interesting to listen to. Mm-hmm. I am so impressed with... I
can feel myself blushing. I don't like this question.
with his knowledge of perfumery is just amazing to me. The fact that he did not go to perfume school, but he's taught himself everything about perfume. And so I really have no regrets. I have none. We've worked really, really hard together, but I wouldn't have traded 1 minute of it.
No.
So,
yeah.
All right. Okay, my turn. So, I have come up with some truly bizarre ideas over the years. I freely admit this. Some of my concepts have been, let's call them ill-conceived. And a lot of that stems from a deep-seated drive to push the envelope and to be different from other people. I very much pride myself, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that Barrister and Mann is not like other soap companies. We do not dupe fragrances. Nearly everything we do is original. I am frequently heard to say that nobody does Halloween like Barrister and Mann, and I take a lot of pride in that, and it probably sounds a little conceited, but, whatever. So my point here is that in all of that time, through some very weird ideas, some of which I have had to convince my mother of, she's always been in. She has never doubted me. She's never doubted that I could make it happen. She has occasionally doubted whether people would really get it. But Mom, in all this time, you have never doubted me. No. You have never doubted that I could do what I said I could do. That you have never doubted. You've always believed in me.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Thank you.
Aww. My best boy.
Yeah.
Only boy. I'm an only child. You can tell, can't you?
Well, as we find things down, y'all, I had one point that I wanted to make about something you said earlier. Mm-hmm. The pictures I have of my grandfather are all faded. They're not digital. They're folded up in a drawer. Their time has not been kind to them. Mm-hmm. The video that we have of him is super old. Again, time has not been super kind. My children will only have a vague idea of what he looked and sounded like. But they will know what he smelled like. because
thank you.
The first time I opened this, it all came flooding back in vivid Technicolor. And I say this commonly to the artisans, but part of your life's work is to give us these wonderful, time-traveling, nostalgic, emotional moments, be it in our shave mirror, but be damned, that's where if you did not go, and I didn't even get into your Chanel unboxing stories or fountain pens. We have a lot more to cover. We'll do another live at Christmas time. But I just wanted to say the amount of care that's just put into the base alone, the amount of diligence that's put into recreating these archive scents, and then not only that, but giving us senses of your journey and the memories that you have, and the homages to the celebrities through your eyes that we get to cover. I think it's part of the reason that we sort of enjoy making our artisans sort of little celebrities in this world, because we like you guys so much and we enjoy how you see the world. And so I know that you would probably have made a lot more money as a lawyer, but we are so grateful that you decided to put all of this love and care into us and our shaving experiences and bringing back these scents that were so important to us and taking us on these brand new adventures. And so y'all, thank you for knowing exactly what in our shaving mirror.
Pushing the envelope and finding the scents that we all need in our day. You know?
And let's be honest, y'all, as I'm discovering my bases after a year and after trying 350 soaps, the Barrister and Mann, I've said this on the show in the last 2 weeks, the Barrister and Mann base is special. It's one of the top 5. It's different. And it's vegan, and there's just it's a vegetable base, and there's just something about it that is just magical. And so, just on behalf of the fantastic whip pack we've got with us tonight, we just wanted to thank both of you for. I know some days it's hard to go to any job, but you have a large community out there that's very grateful that you put your feet on the cold floor and make these for us every day. And we just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you guys take good care, and we will have
for your little Halloween launch coming up.
Yeah, look up episode soon. We will film that as soon as we get it, and hopefully maybe we can do this again around Christmas time.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
all right.
That'd be great. Terrific.
All right, so thank you all for being here. Thank you for all these wonderful questions.
Up late for us.
Yeah, East Coasters.
No problem.
This has been awesome.
Problem.
And thank you very much for being here. This has been so much fun. I laughed this much.
Thank you for asking us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.